Hi, everybody. Welcome to the February 27th, 2015 edition of Colorado Inside Out. I'm your host, Dominic Duzzuti. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's get a quick take on the Denver International Airport celebrating the 20th anniversary of its opening this Saturday. It's still the newest and biggest commercial airport in the country as it expands a hotel and a light rail line coming next year. Panopticon from Westward, does it feel like it's been 20 years?
No, it feels like just yesterday that the opening was delayed for the fourth time back in 1994. We had the incredible baggage problem on the automated baggage system that ate suitcases. We had the cost overruns, but against all odds, it seems to me DIA has worked out pretty well. Somehow it seems much closer than it did back in 1995 when we were first driving out there. And people seem to like it. Now, if they could just have the pot souvenirs, if the expansion can work as well, if they can keep the Mustang there and keep the good art there, we'll have a good airport for the next 20 years.
And they're celebrating with you get sent
this
a
beautiful
huge press
gift
kit.
packet.
We'll show this part of it. Just one of many items in there. The whole TSA approved.
Right. When it opened, you were able to carry more than 3 ounces of liquid.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's how times have changed with DIA and how we travel. David Kopel from the Independence Institute and DU Law School. Is DIA the airport that was promised us 20 years ago?
We were promised an airport whose purpose was a large public works construction project, and we got that. And we got all the buy-in from the public works contractors and everybody else to the political system to make that happen. I'm skeptical about an airport whose artwork logo is Satan's stallion. We had an airport that was a great business advantage to Denver. We were the second closest airport to the city center. The only thing closer was Reagan Airport in DC. And when we think about all the corporate welfare that goes into convention centers and things like that, we had a really strong natural advantage of you can fly in and get to downtown or wherever easily and quickly. We traded that, and Stapleton needed to be expanded, but there was space to do that at the Rocky Mountain Arsenal to add additional runways. Instead of our close and convenient airport, we now have the second furthest airport from the city center, second only to Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C. So it is a good airport to connect through with plenty of shopping, but it is a inconvenient airport for the people who live in this city and for travelers who are coming to Denver to do business in Denver.
Penfield Tate, attorney at Greenberg Traurig, also a longtime state lawmaker. 20 years we've seen DIA cover a whole host of highs and lows. David brings up a good point. I mean, I like to tease people that we share an airport with Kansas, which is nice. But DIA has also done pretty well. I mean, it's still promised to be a good cold weather airport or a bad weather airport. It's delivered on that message. What do you feel about these first 20 years of DIA?
Well, first, I think David's far too cynical. I think DIA...
No, wait a second. David Kopel cynical at this table?
DIA represents a promise made, a promise kept. We were promised a world-class airport, and that's what this region got. Clearly, DIA is a star among airports, both nationally and internationally. It has been a phenomenal boon for the Colorado economy. When you look where it's placed now, but for DIA, you wouldn't have the Stapleton neighborhood to begin with, and we couldn't expand onto the Arsenal because they weren't going to make land available for runways. But now you have the Stapleton Airport, all of that development, Northfield. It's done wonders for Green Valley Ranch and some of the other development around Tower Road. Aurora's benefited from DIA, the suburbs have benefited from DIA, and we've all benefited from a world-class airport, and that's what we have. And it's going to get even better with the hotel and with the light rail line running to it. Sure, it's physically more distant from the core of the city than Stapleton was, but then Stapleton also gave us the benefit of lawsuits from neighborhoods about the noise. And so there were a host of problems we had to work through. But I think what DIA really represents is through the Pena and Webb administrations, how government can work for communities and a region, and how people can participate in that process and get an end result that works in everybody's best interest.
Eli Stokols, political reporter with Fox 31, anchor on KWGN. We're honored to have you here. As we heard the big news this week about you heading off to D.C., all the comparisons with D.C. airports. We have
Much
Eli
nicer
make this
flying
move.
into Reagan than Dulles, that's for sure.
Exactly. Give us your how you feel about DIA's big 20th anniversary.
I wasn't here 20 years ago. I've heard the nightmarish stories about the bags being eaten. But I think that, aside from it being in West Kansas, you have to talk a lot about what's happened in the 20 years since and give a lot of credit to folks like Tom Clark and economic development folks who have really taken the airport and made sure that they've recruited business and new flights and new pathways to not just Europe now, but to Asia. I was on the second flight to Japan last year, I believe, and getting back from Tokyo in 9 hours is kind of incredible. And you can think about what that does for business. And now they're establishing routes to South America. So, as an economic driver of international trade and business, I think it's only going to expand and get larger. I think the disappointing thing after 20 years is that we're just now establishing light rail. And in terms of public transportation and making an airport accessible, if you're going to build it in West Kansas, you better come up with ways that people can get there. And I think in terms of making a city livable and multimodal and achieving the things that we talked about, I don't know why it's taken 20 years. I mean, we all know why. I guess it's the funding and the money. But it's disappointing that it's taken 20 years to finally get people who can take the train out to that airport.
I couldn't agree with you more. You go to other big cities, you get off the plane, you can spend a couple bucks to get to the city center. The fact that it was always a $50 or more taxi cab from DIA was embarrassing. It's nice at least the problem's getting fixed now. 9 of 36 policy proposals received the required support from the Colorado Oil and Gas Task Force to be sent to the governor this week. The proposals range from sharing information about local government's land plans to creating a process to mediate disputes between local communities and energy companies. Patty, we've been waiting for these proposals since really the task force was created last year, really just to change the election 2014 and hopefully get something out of it. Some folks say that we have some pretty productive proposals, but still not sure if it's going to stop anything from going to the ballot. From what you saw this week, what do you think?
Well, certainly the biggest success was in keeping it off the ballot in 2014, because now we're seeing that there are people who look like they're going to be pushing for a statewide ban. We have the people complaining about fracking Denver, when in fact the only fracking in Denver is on DIA, and I bet they're taking more than 3 ounces out each time. So we're going to be hearing a lot of things over the next few months, as the legislature only needs to take action on 2 of these, although they could certainly opt to do some others. Some of the compromises that came up look pretty good, but there were so many more things floated than the 9 that the majority were able to agree on. I think it's too bad that we didn't come closer on giving locals at least more voice, local municipalities. If local municipalities can decide not to have pot shops, they can certainly come up with something against fracking in their own community, depending on how invasive the fracking procedure is. So I think we did actually have a discussion. We need more discussion. And unfortunately, we're going to get more discussion, probably in all the wrong ways.
David, when you look at the 9 proposals, what does it do to the middle ground folks as they perceive fracking? The folks who are anti-fracking until it's banned aren't going to be in favor of any proposals, and the oil and gas company is going to be on their side. But for that middle ground of folks looking for kind of the Colorado flavored compromise, how do you think they'll look at these proposals?
Well, favorably, I think, and I think actually the proposals that came out reflect well on Governor Hickenlooper in selecting a diverse commission. And then I believe you needed 2/3 support for the proposals, and that meant you couldn't have just one or the other faction. So these consensus proposals, I think, do make sense. They are good ways to promote earlier community involvement and notice, and at the same time, they are also fair to property owners because they don't allow someone's property rights to be taken away with no compensation. It is true that a city or a county can say whether they're going to have retail marijuana stores, but you can't forbid somebody under our Constitution from growing marijuana on their own land. And likewise, if you're a homeowner and you want fracking to take place on your land, that is your right. And if a government wants to take it away, they ought to pay you how much they're taking, the value they're taking, which is enormous. But of course, that's not even on the table. We have a state law that says the Oil and Gas Commission is supposed to foster the development of the oil and gas extraction in this state. And just like you could say having a good airport fosters economic development and prosperity for the people as a whole, so does the oil and gas industry. So this is a positive, fair, and balanced result from the Commission, and kudos to them for their work.
Penn, do you think that the results from the task force will be, I guess, sold or marketed properly by lawmakers? Because you saw some people being supportive of it, but you saw the predictable reaction from activists who are against fracking saying these are terrible. But it seemed that even from Governor Hickenlooper, yeah, these should probably be adopted. Well, he didn't need to have a parade, but it didn't really just seem like a ringing endorsement. Does it need that to win over that middle ground?
I think it does, but I think more to Patty's point, I don't think it resolves the controversy. I think the Commission did good work. I know that several of the members, based on their public comments, were disappointed that they couldn't get consensus on some bigger policy issues, but that's the nature of the group if they require 2/3 agreement. So what they really did is sort of created a platform to codify agreement on all of the sort of easy stuff. The real difficult questions are out there, and they couldn't reach resolution on those. And unfortunately, we'll probably have a battleground again with a series of ballot proposals being filed, which I don't think serves us well, because typically that context for dealing with big policy issues isn't always the best place. And the thing that I still find distressing personally is someone who wants to see us reach some sort of statewide compromises. Despite all of the TV commercials that still get run, no one's addressed the core science issue. Is it safe in neighborhoods and in other places? No one has really definitively spoken to that, and until that's spoken to, I think the contentious nature of this debate just continues.
Eli, what was the reaction on Capitol Hill to these 9 proposals and the overall task force in general?
Well, I mean, the governor's office is pretty happy with it. They wanted to make it seem like this wasn't just sort of a, charade that they did to, get out of a sticky situation last year, and that it was actually real and it was going to come up with tangible solutions. I mean, all they did was take the low-hanging fruit. I think at the Capitol, look, nothing's getting through the Capitol. I mean, we've already seen the first month and a half of the legislature. It's just each party, each chamber shooting the other guys hostage every single day. So, I mean, nothing legislatively is getting done on this, at least for 2 years, and I think there's a recognition of that. The governor can act in a regulatory arena with some of this stuff, but again, it's just the low-hanging fruit. I mean, you talk about a policy area I will be disappointed to leave behind and not get to focus on as much. I mean, this isn't peace in the Middle East, but it's close on the state level. There's nothing else that seems like as impossible to resolve as this, and the reason is, you can understand that the environment, the economy, there are different things here, and it seems to be a little bit of a zero-sum game. There's a lot of money on both sides, and the industry is right when it says there are activists out there who want nothing short of a full statewide ban. That's true. Some of them do. They're right when they say they've given a lot and they've taken on new regulations and supported them that cost them a lot of money. And as the market has shifted and the price of oil has dropped, it's a little harder for them to compromise and say, okay, we'll just, here's another couple $100 million of, costs. We'll just eat it. We're not as willing to do that at this point. But the industry also locked down and would not support anything but the most minimal concessions to local control. And so I think, both sides are willing to move, then we could get somewhere. But given the outside interests, that does not seem all that likely.
A bill that would ban red light cameras in photo radar vans was approved by a state House committee this week. Supporters of the ban referred to the devices as cash cows, while opponents, including law enforcement officials, say they make the streets safer. Traffic cameras accumulated $14 million in revenue in 2014, with a lot of it coming from fines paid by Denver drivers. David, this is always something that we see at the Capitol, but it hasn't gone anywhere in past years because law enforcement officials, and including city officials, have been able to say, no, this is a big deal and the bill dies. Do you think the future of this bill is going to be any different?
I hope so. In the 19th century, the English utilitarian philosopher Jeremy Bentham designed a new type of prison called the Panopticon, where the guards, it was because of how it was arranged in a circle, so every prisoner could be visible to the guards every second of the day. The 20th century French postmodernist philosopher Michel Foucault talked about how society in general was becoming that panopticon, with people under constant surveillance. And things have gotten a lot worse since he wrote that several decades ago. Red light cameras are, you use high technology with a private company contracted to spy on the people and collect revenue from it and share some of that with the government. This is a model that you can see expanding. Boulder can hire a company to provide drones and fly over the Boulder Creek path and see if somebody is vaping there and knock them with a $150 fine. So the red light cameras are a terrible precedent. It is true that when you go into public, including on the public streets, you make yourself visible. But I don't think we consent to being under constant electronic surveillance when we go out in public. And if you in London, you certainly are, from one security camera to another. You're never off the telescreens of Big Brother. That's the wrong way to go. It is a starting point for a totalitarian society, and even if it remains the forms of democracy, a citizenry under constant surveillance is not a free citizenry. So I hope they cut the head of the snake off now and have strong laws to prevent the growth of future things like this.
Pam, I'm not exactly sure how you follow 19th century English and French philosophy.
I'll go there.
Give it your best shot. If anyone can do it, I know you can.
I'll just say, David, I agree with the final point. But here's the thing I've never understood about this issue. If they worked, they wouldn't be cash cows. So clearly, they're not changing people's behavior. What people do, at least with the vans, is since they now by regulation have to post, oh, by the way, dummy, there's a photo radar van up ahead, people slam on the brakes and slow down, pass the van, then they slam on the accelerator again and keep right on going. I think it really is, it's a subterfuge. I don't think these things are saving lives. I don't think they're deterring traffic accidents. I think it is revenue generation, and I think that's why local governments like it, but I don't know if that's the right policy. I think what's far more of a deterrent is, say, having money to put enough officers on the street to have people behave appropriately when they're driving around town. So we'll see what happens. I think this bill's going to pass. I think they're going to ban it. I know when I was there, we had a couple of legislators who frankly put some of the regs in place now because they were tired of collecting these tickets when they came to Denver to come up and sit in the Capitol.
Eli, you are our guy in Capitol Hill. Is this going to get to the governor's desk?
I think it could this year. I think because of the change dynamic, and I mean, it's not an issue that cuts totally along partisan lines. There are a lot of Democrats that are sort of divided on it. Mm-hmm. Most Republicans don't like it because they're a little more libertarian. I was sort of in awe of the Foucault reference and the Bentham reference. I also think that's a little bit over the top to say that because there are cameras on red lights trying to enforce traffic laws and probably generating a lot of revenue for the municipalities that use them, that we're all under surveillance. I mean, look, there are cameras everywhere, and whether these are banned or not, people in public are going to have to understand there are cameras everywhere, and a lot of them are people's cell phones, and police officers have to understand. I mean, that's just the new reality in the 21st century. It's different from a totalitarian surveillance state where you might have concerns about that based on what the NSA is doing. But when you're walking down the public street in downtown Denver, I think that there are a lot of cameras whether we ban these or not. I think it's interesting. Ed Perlmutter, as progressive a Democrat as there is in the Washington, the federal delegation, wants to push a federal bill on this. I joked with him and wrote a piece saying, I wonder if that means he's running for governor, because these things are pretty popular, and this is a sort of populist red meat legislation for a lot of people who look at it and say, oh, that's great, get something done. I hate those cameras. Anybody who's got a ticket probably hates those cameras. But in terms of the impact, it'll probably impact municipalities the most.
Patty, you can quote Hobbes or Locke or Calvin and Hobbes. You go for it. And what's your point on the probability that we'll see a red light camera ban soon?
It might be the only thing that we'll actually see legislators agree on this year, because everyone hates them. And it's not just the vans that, as you point out, you get warned about and you're really stupid if you miss those. But the bigger problem is if you have the red light, you don't have a judgment call there. Your wheel goes your tire is 3 feet too far up, you stop, you still get the ticket, you have to fight the ticket. That's the kind of irritating bureaucracy that is, I think, really turning off the citizenry. And this is one of the things, they're used to people with their cell phones taking pictures of them. They're used to people putting nasty things about them, especially if it's Eli on Facebook. People are used to this now, but you at least want to be able to fight back, and you can't do it with the red light tickets for the most part. So I think we'll see this pass, and it'll be really fascinating to see if Perlmutter's able to get it through Congress.
That's very true. Well, let's get a quick take on this one. Colorado legislators are considering a bill that would tighten restrictions on physicians who prescribe marijuana for patients complaining of severe pain. The proposal also looks at medical caregivers who grow plants for others. Penn, we've heard a lot about recreational marijuana regulation. This is one of the first times we've heard about medical marijuana regulation. What do you think?
I think it's years too late. I think every 21 to 34-year-old with life-altering pain already has their medical marijuana card, and so they're not going to be impacted. My fear is what's now going to happen is, remember we talked a couple weeks ago about the one student in one of the public schools who was taking the oil and it didn't have much THC and they got expelled. Those are the folks now who I think are going to be impacted by tightening this, is the folks who have truly legitimate medical needs, and they're using a sort of a traditional physician who's not a marijuana physician to try this as a new therapy. They're the ones who are going to get caught up in this morass now, trying to figure out how and when and if they can prescribe to their patients. I think I understand what the legislature wants to do. I think they're just years too late doing this.
Eli, your quick take on this one.
Yeah, what he said, although better late than never. I mean, I think it was amazing over the last decade how everybody, my age in Colorado immediately got sick. And hopefully they're doing better. I think that you got to try. I think this just speaks to the difficulty of, when you legislate through the ballot box and through initiatives and amend the Constitution, you got to go back to the Constitution. So to really harmonize medical and recreational, voters will have to do it. And that's an undertaking that'll take a couple of years. So the legislators can just sort of make piecemeal changes. But, as we talk about oil and gas and other things, I think people should be very cautious of voting yes on any ballot initiative because of how difficult it is to change it down the road.
Patty, you are our expert here. Do you think this is going to go through?
I think it might go through, and it will be too bad in some ways because it's punitive to some of the people who really do need this. The kids, and I'm not talking about the 18-year-olds with severe pain, I'm talking about the 3- and 4-year-olds with the seizure disorders. The caregivers who really got into this because they believed medically it was helpful, and the onus is on them now. And cynics will say it's just because the state would like to see some of the revenues going to medical marijuana coming in and getting taxed as recreational.
David, your quick take wraps it up.
The bill goes too far and is too punitive. For example, it says if you're a caregiver, you're growing for other people, you have to register within 10 days of getting a notice that you're supposed to, and that's fine. But if you don't register within the 10 days, then you're forbidden forever to become a caregiver. You can be out of town. There's a million reasons why we have all failed to respond within 10 days to something we got in the mail, and a lifetime ban is too severe a penalty for the kind of mistakes that everybody makes when getting a notice from the government sometimes.
Well, speaking of mistakes from the government, it's time to get to Disgrace of the Week. Patty, as always, start us off.
And I have one. We're masquerading as Miami Beach for a while in January, but it is Colorado. It does snow. And the way Denver Public Schools handled the decision yesterday to cancel school, after many of the kids had walked to their buses, many of the teachers had gone there, was just a disaster.
I was watching Eli's channel 2. You see they did a morning shot, and there's this one poor kid in front of East High School just waiting for his parents to come back, just sitting there waiting. It was just a perfect image of that failed policy. You're right. David.
The Joe McCarthy of 2015, Arizona Representative Raul Grijalva, who sent a letter to the University of Colorado demanding to know about Professor Roger Pilkey, who is a climatologist who thinks that global warming is real, favors a man-made global warming, favors a climate tax, but has also written articles saying that this whole thing, like global warming is causing massive additional hurricanes and things like that, the sort of apocalypse disaster movie scenarios, that's not really accurate. And so because he dares to question one aspect of this McCarthyite orthodoxy, now there's a congressional investigation of him.
Penn.
Denver police officer Sean Miller, who has probably set a record for 40 complaints in 9 years, and the DPD wonders why they have an image problem.
Eli.
It's a good one. I'll meet Dave on the climate change thing and say Senator Jim Inhofe of Oklahoma taking a snowball to the Senate floor yesterday and saying, see, climate change doesn't exist. I mean, talk about a facepalm. How somebody like that gets elected over and over and over again is just sort of mind-blowing.
That to me is the disgrace. Is
Yeah.
they keep getting reelected. Say something nice rather quickly, Patty.
Planes, trains, and automobiles, the return of the ski train heading to Winter Park on March 14th. One time only, but we'll see if it keeps going.
Sold out fast. David.
Larry Zimmer, broadcaster of University of Colorado football games for 41 years, looking like he's coming back from health problems and will be able to broadcast for us again.
Penn.
Two locally, a community is made up of its people. We lost two good ones that we commemorated this week. Floyd Jackson, the father of Denver County Court Judge Gary Jackson, passed away, a real pioneer, World War II veteran, and activist in the community here. And then the naming of the library for Corky Gonzalez tomorrow. That's going to be wonderful.
Eli.
I'll just say thank you to everybody in town who's been in touch with me this week and made me feel really gratified for the work that we've done the last several years here and for being part of this community. Those are all the folks that I'm going to miss leaving, and the folks who have made Denver and Colorado such a great home. So thanks to all of them.
Well, I will echo that. I think you're leaving some huge shoes to fill. Politico's gain is certainly our loss, but we certainly wish you the very best. Glad we could feature this as part of the Eli Farewell Tour.
I appreciate it.
That's all the time we have tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Remember that if you missed any part of the show or want to catch our web-exclusive segment CIO Postgame, check out cpt12.org or YouTube. I also send out our takes via Twitter, so please feel free to follow me at @DDaZuti. Also, I'm excited to announce that you can listen to our show on a podcast on iTunes. That's right. Be sure to check it out right there on iTunes.com. For everyone here at Channel 12, I'm Dominic DeZuti. Thanks for watching. Good night.
He's doing the EIC, that's engineer in charge. Some people call it engineer in command. Basically, he's going through making sure the color's right on the cameras.
How's it going?
Before the show, Ryan goes through and calibrates all the cameras to make sure they all match each other. And then we set the iris. And then during the show, what he's doing right now is he's going through and fading the lights to make sure different people's skin tones all look the same, so that the brightness of the skin all looks the same. Making sure the angles of the lights are correct, the backlight is hitting right, the key and the fill light are hitting right.
My name is Patrick Logan. I do the graphics for Colorado Inside Out. I like squirrels. Basically what I do here is make sure all the guest titles are correct and all the credits are correct, and then bring them in during the show. The hardest parts about credits and the graphics is to make sure that they're right. You have to be on top of spelling and grammar, and I try to be pretty good about that, but it is very noticeable if something is spelled wrong or something is used the wrong way. I like squirrels.
So this is Gabrielle Bryant, the producer of Colorado Inside Out. So if I sound like I know what I'm saying when I'm on the program, it's because of Miss Bryant's work. And it's also due to this little gadget, our teleprompter. She's back here running the prompter, making sure that I'm saying the right things at the right time. And if I ever look confused, it's probably because something's gone wrong with the teleprompter machine. I also come back here, and if we need to make any changes, this is where I would dictate exactly what I would need to say on the show, and then I would leave. Gabrielle would ignore that and go with what she felt was right.
And everything's really easy. If I need to change anything, I could just go here and make my little additions and change whatever I need to change. So first I hit this here, and then it will allow me to put the prompter up in the monitor there. So that'll give Dominic an opportunity to see what's there. So hopefully we never have any Ron Burgundy issues.
I'm Dominic Dezzuti. We want to avoid those Ron Burgundy moments, and it's key that if she's happy, then I'll get the right information. And also, if I'm running late in the program, she can show me how much time we have left, which I'm always keeping very good time, right? I've never run late on this program.
Everything,
Exactly.
he has everything all together.
It's payday in a couple days, which is why she's keeping very legit. Usually I'm pretty late in the program, but she's
Yeah,
kind.
it's really fun. I mean, I can always have fun with it, and I can make it go super, super fast if I need to, or slow it down, confuse him a little bit, but yeah, this is where everything is controlled, so.
Exactly. This is why they call it the control room, with Gabrielle at the controls.
There's a lot of subtleties that happen for all of our positions, and we all have to kind of gel together to try and make the best show that we can.
Got a show to do. Got a show to do. Okay, get the camera in my face.